Welcome, future toppers. So you're gearing up for the CBSE 2027 board exams, right? Well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking a really high-energy tour through the ultimate communication networks of living organisms, control and coordination. Think of your body as this hyper-advanced, finely tuned machine. Today, we're popping the hood. We're going to see exactly how it runs, how it reacts to danger, and honestly, how it just keeps you alive every single second of the day.
Okay, let's dive into our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll be conquering 5 big topics: neurons in the synapse, the reflex arc, inside the human brain, plant movements and tropisms, and finally, animal hormones and glands.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Neurons and the Synapse.
Before we even try to understand the brain, we really need to understand our microscopic electrical wiring. Because what do we actually mean by control and coordination? You know, it's not just about moving your limbs. It's really about how our systems detect changes in the environment, like say a sudden loud noise, a massive drop in temperature, or touching a hot surface, and then evoke an appropriate, perfectly controlled response rather than just random chaotic flailing.
And the absolute star of this whole communication system is the neuron. Now, its anatomy is a hugely tested board exam concept. Here's how it flows. Information from your senses first enters those branch-like structures called dendrites. From there, the signal moves right through the main cell body, or the soma. Then, it travels incredibly fast down that long protective tail called the axon. And finally, it exits at the nerve endings, the axon terminal. And this entire journey, it happens via a lightning-fast electrical impulse.
But here's a fascinating puzzle. And by the way, a highly tested concept. Neurons don't actually touch each other. There's literally a tiny physical, fluid-filled gap between them. So if the signal is purely electrical, how on earth does it jump across empty space to get to the next neuron without just, short-circuiting?
Well, this microscopic gap is called the synapse. When the electrical impulse reaches the axon terminal of the first neuron, the presynaptic knob, it triggers these little sacs called synaptic vesicles, and these sacs release chemicals known as neurotransmitters. These chemicals basically drift across the synaptic cleft and lock onto the receptors on the dendrite of the next neuron. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is that the signal actually changes. It goes from electrical to chemical and then right back to electrical. And because these neurotransmitters are only released from one side, it forces a strict one-way flow of information.
Moving right along to Section 2, the reflex arc. Okay, so we've seen the normal wiring, but what happens when you need an emergency override to protect yourself from immediate harm? Imagine you accidentally touch a burning hot flame. Your body actually doesn't have time to send that pain signal all the way up to the thinking part of your brain, wait for you to consciously process the pain, and then send a signal all the way back down. Conscious thought is simply way too slow for urgent, tissue-damaging dangers. Instead, the signal takes a brilliant shortcut. It travels straight to your spinal cord, which instantly fires back a command to your arm muscles to reflexively pull your hand away. I really want you to step through this exact sequence with me right now, because locking in this specific pathway is a guaranteed way to score points on your exam. Step 1, the receptor in your skin detects the heat. Step 2, the sensory neuron carries this impulse. Step 3, it reaches the spinal cord, completely bypassing the brain. Step 4, the spinal cord immediately activates the motor neuron. And Step 5, the motor neuron triggers the effector, your muscle, to contract and pull your hand away. Receptor, sensory neuron, spinal cord, motor neuron, effector. Make sure you lock that in.
Next up, Section 3, inside the human brain.
So, moving up the spinal cord to the absolute mainframe of the central nervous system, the brain is, as you know, incredibly complex. But for your exam, you really just need to structure your understanding around 3 major regions: the forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. The forebrain, which includes the massive cerebrum, is your main thinking, memory, and sensory center. It's literally what you use to solve math problems. The midbrain, that handles visual and auditory reflexes. But pay very special attention to the hindbrain. Examiners absolutely love testing this. The hindbrain contains the cerebellum, which maintains your posture and balance, and the medulla, which controls vital and voluntary actions like your heartbeat, breathing, and blood pressure. I mean, you don't have to remind yourself to breathe, right? That's because your medulla is handling the whole shebang.
All right, Section 4, Plant Movements and Tropisms.
Let's pivot for a moment. We've been talking all about complex brains and lightning-fast nerves. But how do organisms without brains or nerves, like plants, coordinate their growth, and ensure survival, while they rely entirely on plant hormones, like auxins. Now, what's really interesting here is looking at a potted plant that's been knocked over. The roots exhibit what we call positive geotropism. They bend downwards, right in the direction of gravity, to find water. Meanwhile, the shoots show negative geotropism, growing upwards to reach the sunlight. This all happens because auxins actually accumulate on the lower shaded side of the shoot. That causes those specific cells to elongate faster, which literally bends the entire plant upwards toward the sun.
Now, you absolutely must be able to contrast the two main types of plant movements. Tropic movements, like the geotropism we literally just talked about, are directional, growth-related, and happen very, very slowly over days or even weeks. Nastic movements, on the other hand, are completely non-directional and extremely fast. Think of the famous touch-me-not plant, the Mimosa pudica, that instantly folds its leaves the second you poke it. That incredibly fast response, it isn't growth. It's actually a rapid change in turgor pressure inside the plant cells responding to that touch.
And finally, Section 5, Animal Hormones and Glands.
Transitioning back to humans, we're moving from our fast electrical wiring network to the body's powerful wireless chemical network, the endocrine system. I'm telling you right now, understanding these glands is your ultimate study tool for the exams. They frequently test how hormonal imbalances lead to specific disorders. So, your pituitary gland, that's the master gland controlling growth hormone. Your thyroid gland secretes thyroxine, and a lack of dietary iodine here causes a swollen neck condition called goiter. Your pancreas produces insulin to regulate your blood sugar levels. A deficiency there leads to diabetes. And then your adrenal glands, which sit right above your kidneys, pump out adrenaline to trigger your body's intense fight-or-flight emergency response.
Let's summarize the entire chapter by bringing it all together and contrasting these two master systems. The nervous system is built for pure speed. It uses electrical impulses to deliver short-lived, highly localized responses, like instantly pulling your hand away from a fire. The endocrine system, conversely, is much slower. It releases chemical hormones directly into the bloodstream, but it creates long-lasting, widespread responses across your entire body. They brilliantly complement each other to keep your body functioning in a state of perfect balance.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up today's explainer. If the nervous system is so incredibly fast and efficient, why did humans evolve a slower endocrine system at all? Think about it for a second. You can't exactly trigger years of physical growth, guide a teenager through puberty, or sustain a steady metabolism with a split-second electrical shock, right? You absolutely require widespread sustained chemical signals for long-term development. Master how these two incredible systems work together, and you will completely crush this chapter. Wishing you all the absolute best for your 2027 board exams. Keep studying smart, keep focused, and we'll see you in the next explainer.